Our top focus this morning is the big Karnataka Hijab Raw. I'm throwing it across now to my colleague Nabila, who will take it over from here. She's on ground in Karnataka.
Thanks, Pallavi. I'm right here in Udupi, where the ground zero, we saw the ruckus kick off at the Udupi Government PU College. Many of the petitioners belonging to the same area hoping for some interim relief. Now this matter has reached the Supreme Court, and we have some big breaking news coming in right here, as the Supreme Court has now denied to take up urgent hearing on this matter. Supreme Court has now denied urgent hearing on the hijab showdown. The Chief Justice of India says, and I quote, "Let's wait for the High Court's decision to come out on the hijab face-off." Chief Justice of India says, "We'll take up the matter at an appropriate time." A big Supreme Court setback indeed for petitioners. Remember, a three-judge bench had not given interim relief to those petitioners asking for their hijab to be worn while attending classes. In fact, the hearing has been moved for Monday morning, and in the meanwhile, while colleges open up, the girls were hoping that the court would allow them, grant them permission and interim relief to wear the hijab and attend classes, while the court has clearly said that hijab will not be allowed in the meanwhile until the court hears this matter. You cannot carry your religion inside classes. That was a clear order given by the Chief Justice of Karnataka, and post that, petition was also filed in the Supreme Court, but now we hear the Supreme Court has denied hearing this urgent petition, in fact asking for urgent hearing on this matter, saying let's wait for the Karnataka High Court's decision on the hijab face-off. We'll take up the matter at an appropriate stage. Supreme Court's big setback for these petitioners. Anisha Mathur joining us, tracking the court there for us. Anisha, give us a perspective. What was the petition that was observed by the Supreme Court while they said they're going to wait and watch?
Well, Nabila, remember, there are 4 petitions before the Apex Court, all of which had raised the argument that if this interim order of the Karnataka High Court is allowed to be implemented and schools are allowed to be opened, but no one is allowed to wear their religious dress, it will have a direct impact on the Article 25 rights of the petitioners. What they had also argued, Senior Advocate Devdutt Kamath before the Chief Justice in fact argued that this order of the Karnataka High Court will not just affect the Muslim women students who will not be able to go to school wearing a hijab. It could also affect Sikh students who are wearing turbans. It could have a much larger ramification if the order that says that no student shall disclose any religious identity in a school or college is in fact implemented. Now, the Chief Justice of India, N.V. Ramana, Justice A.S. Bopanna and Justice Hima Kohli's bench was hearing these petitions. 3 of these petitions were mentioned before the court. All of them have asked for urgent hearing. They said that this is going to have a large impact, that this is effectively suspending the right of freedom of conscience of these students. And more importantly, since practical exams are scheduled to start from February 15th, the students will be faced with a very serious choice of whether or not to follow their religion or should they go to school and college and give their exams. But the Chief Justice of India's bench has for now just said that this is an issue that will be taken up at an appropriate time, that the actual order, the written order that was passed by the Karnataka High Court is not yet available. So they don't actually know what exactly is it that the court has said. Thirdly, what the court has said, the Chief Justice has said that we are watching the proceedings, we are seeing what is happening in the state as well as in the High Court. We need to wait and watch what time it would be appropriate to bring this issue to the national level, to Delhi before the Supreme Court. What is also interesting is that the Solicitor General of India, who is appearing for the state government, has said that that since the order has not come out, this is a religious and political issue, that this is an issue that should be left to the High Court to hear for now. So at this stage, with the Chief Justice of India saying that it is not an appropriate time for us to take it up, we'll have to now wait till Monday when the Karnataka High Court bench will take up this matter again. And the question that these students have raised about the larger ramifications, about whether they will have to choose between their religion and their studies, is something that these students will have to consider when the schools and colleges finally reopen. Remember, Karnataka government has said that schools and colleges will reopen in phases. So we'll have to wait and watch what happens next. Back to you.
Right, we've got to wait for an order on that, Anisha, but thank you very much. I'm going to quickly cut across to Nolan Pinto, who is tracking those developments at the Karnataka High Court. Whole of yesterday, Nolan, we heard the arguments in the Karnataka High Court. So far, only the advocate for the petitioners, Hegde, spoke extensively about how hijab is a religious practice and how at least interim relief should be given to these students. In the meanwhile, the higher judge bench takes time to deliberate on this matter. These girls must be allowed inside with the hijab. But the court has outrightly refused, saying that until then, keep your religion outside classes. Hegde also said, you're asking me to choose between food and water. It seems like the Supreme Court now, where the matter has reached, is denied to hear the matter until the High Court clears it. Take us through what more do we know.
Well, Nabila, yesterday the Chief Justice was very adamant. He said that for such a long time, students have actually been out of college because of COVID, and it's time that they actually get back to studies. However, he came out with a rider saying that no religious wear or no religious items or things can be worn when they head back to school or college. Now, this put the government in a dilemma, because we saw what happened on last week and then Monday and Tuesday with the...
Right, Nolan, I'm going to come back to you, but we understand that the Karnataka High Court has said until the matter is heard in court, we've got to wait. The students will have to have some patience. In fact, the court has requested the petitioners to be patient and cooperate until the court takes up the matter on Monday. Anisha, since you are tracking the court, we believe that the Karnataka High Court now, as per the three-judge bench, says that you can't wear your religion inside class until the court gives out a verdict on this. So no interim relief there, which is why it appears the petitioners have in fact reached the Supreme Court out of anxiousness, hoping for some kind of intervention, saying that this is going to have widespread ramifications, and in the meanwhile, they're going to lack in their education, considering exams are just around the corner.
Well, yes, Nabila, that is exactly the arguments that were placed before the Supreme Court. Remember, one major problem at this stage, as far as the petitioners as well as the Supreme Court is concerned, is that the actual written order of the Karnataka High Court is not yet available. What we do know is what the Chief Justice of Karnataka High Court said during the open hearing in the court yesterday, which was that no one should wear any religious dress, that students should go back to schools and colleges, institutions should be allowed to reopen, but no one should insist on wearing religious dress. That is what the oral observation from the court was, but we are still waiting for the written order to actually come out. But at this stage, because the students now believe, now, and I'm going to quote one of the petitioners here, what they have said is that since this particular order by the court is effectively suspending the fundamental right to freedom of conscience, that the High Court order, and I'm quoting one of the petitioners in the Supreme Court, that the High Court, by saying that no one should wear religious dress, has in effect suspended Article 25 for the Muslim community in Karnataka, that their court has directed students to go to schools and colleges without displaying any religious sign, including headscarf or hijab, and this order is an affront to fundamental right, Article 25 fundamental rights. It also says that this kind of an order will primarily affect Muslim hijab wearing women, as it creates an unreasonable classification, because the other community will not be directly affected by this particular order of the Karnataka High Court. One of the petitioner lawyers, Senior Advocate Devdutt Kamath, who was appearing before the Supreme Court this morning, mentioning the matter for urgent hearing, also said that it is a very strange order, saying that no display of religious affiliation has to be done in a school or college classroom, because not only will it affect Muslim women, it will also have a larger impact. Sikh students who wear turbans and karas to school and college could also be affected. This is something that directly impacts fundamental right to freedom of conscience. Now, but the Supreme Court, of course, at this stage has said that this is not an appropriate time for their intervention, because the court order, High Court order, is not yet known, because they don't know what the actual impact of the order is going to be. So therefore, at least today, the Supreme Court has chosen not to interfere into this. But the question of larger implications, the question of the right of conscience, and particularly since from 15th of February, practical exams are scheduled to start. That is something that the students and the petitioners are now worried about, but we'll have to wait and watch and see how this entire thing plays out. Back to you.
Sure, Anisha, thank you very much. But stay with us. We have some big news coming in. Like expected, we're looking at repercussions of the hijab ban in educational institutions in Karnataka, reach several other parts of India. We're looking at Malegaon right now. Hectic protests that have now started off in Malegaon, where men and women have come forward in protest against the hijab ban in educational institutions. Now, without police permission yesterday, in fact, thousands of women and men from the Muslim community came out on the roads in Malegaon in the invocation of Jamiat Ulema-e-Hind. Other organizations have also supported protest against the Karnataka incident. In fact, many of those protesters there saying hijab is our right, take back the ban on hijab. That was the demand. Today they have declared to follow Hijab Day in Malegaon. In fact, the police have also served a notice. Despite not giving a permission, these protesters have gotten on the streets. Police have now served a notice to the local MLA there regarding this violation, as he also participated in this protest without a police permission. He also made a speech there. 4 organizers of the Jamiat Ulema-e-Hind have now been blocked for they've in fact been suspended. They've been taken in and booked for violation of section 144 that's already in place. Let me quickly cut across to Mustafa joining us live for more on that. Mustafa, in Malegaon, Maharashtra, we are seeing hectic protests. In fact, a group of men and women have come out, protested against the hijab ban, saying that hijab is our right, you can't ban it. Without police permission, a protest has been initiated. Many of those protesters have already been booked. Section 144 has been imposed in Malegaon.
Well, yes, Malegaon is one of the communally sensitive districts of Maharashtra, and this protest, what we are hearing, was conducted without any police permission, and hence under section 144, notices have been served to Jamiat Ulema-e-Hind, which is the organizing body for this protest, under whose banner hundreds of men and women had gathered around there. Also, the local MLA from the AIMIM party has also been served a notice. Remember, the Maharashtra police, since the day one, is trying its best to keep the law and order in control. In Mumbai and outside, there were a lot of protests which were organized, but police never gave them a permission, and hence no pro-hijab protest had taken place in Mumbai. But yes, yesterday, without permission in Malegaon, this protest had taken place, and legal action has been initiated under these rules. And Maharashtra government maintains the stance that uniform code should be followed in the classroom, and there should not be any communally sensitive comments made, and no protests should be organized. Back to you.
Right, Mustafa, we understand that many of these protesters have been booked as well. In fact, a local MLA has also been questioned about him participating in that protest in Malegaon. He's also given a speech there. What kind of words were spoken, if you can give us an insight to that?
Well, what we are hearing from our sources is that those the speeches which were made for pro-hijab, and also there is a hijab day called in Malegaon today. As we were saying, that Malegaon, if you see, is a communally sensitive area wherein the minority and majority population sometimes are seen at loggerheads, and hence the police had denied permission, because the fear from the law enforcement agencies is that if they allow pro-hijab protests to take place, then anti-hijab protests will also start, and hence what started from Udupi then later spread to Karnataka can spread to many other parts of the country, and that is what no enforcement agency wants, and hence there are no permissions being given. But still, this protest was organized, and the local representative, the MLA from AIMIM party, had stood there. He gave a speech supporting hijab in classrooms and schools. We are already hearing reports from one of the schools in Mumbai saying the hijab is not allowed inside the classroom. So this is something which had started from Karnataka, spreading across the country. The police is trying to do its best to maintain the law and order, and because this protest was organized without permission and the permission was denied by the police, legal action has been initiated. Back to you.
Some reactions coming on the same. He's Mufti Muhammad Ismail. He's the MLA who was also participating in that protest. Let's take a listen what he has to say.
किसी को ये हक नहीं है कि वो आपको बेलिबास करे, किसी को ये हक नहीं है कि वो आपसे ये मुतालबा करे कि तुम बेपर्दा रहो, बेहिजाब रहो। जाहिर बात है, हैरत होती है कि मुल्क में नंगे रहने वालों को कोई ये नहीं कहता कि कपड़े पहनो। कम कपड़े में रहने वालों को कोई ये नहीं कहता कि तुम अपने जिस्म को ढांको। हमारी बहनें बेटियां अगर आईनी हक और शरीयत की पासदारी करते हुए अगर वो पर्दा करती हैं, हिजाब में रहती हैं, तो उन्हें मजबूर किया जा रहा है कि वो बेहिजाब रहें, बेपर्दा रहें।
All right, Mustafa, we heard that MLA speak. Here we understand that at several parts of the country, protests have erupted. Many parts, including Maharashtra, there's been Section 144 that has been imposed. Despite that, we're seeing brazenly protesters getting on the streets and making their voice heard. This Jamaat-e-Ulema in Malegaon, despite not being given permission, have very brazenly stepped out to protest against this hijab ban. We understand that they've been booked for violation of Section 144 too. The MLA too jumping in, almost emboldening the protesters right there on the streets.
Yes, Nabila, and if you look at his language, you know, that is something which draws us to the same basic point, is that hijab protests had started for the fundamental rights of the girls, but the politics which is being played around on that issue, you know, it is resonating now in the entire country. The MIM MLA is really trying to play the Muslim card on this entire issue and making comments on girls who are not wearing hijab. So this is something which now, you know, divides the society, and then reactions will start coming in against his statements. So these are things which the agencies don't want, because this can further lead to a law and order situation, because already there are a lot of questions are being raised on this entire issue, because now, as it was mentioned in the Supreme Court, what we understood is that this was just an oral order. The written order is yet to be passed, and hence there cannot be a decision on the SLP which was filed today, because the SLP has to be against a written order. And versus that, the petitioners mentioned, saying that there are people who wear turbans, so this entire order can have repercussions in the entire country of what people choose to wear from different religious beliefs. So what will happen to that? The second important point, which was, you know, was raised by Owaisi during his reaction, in which he said whether your fundamental rights and in the classroom, whether your fundamental rights are not valid inside the classroom, is classroom different than any other place? So these are a lot of questions which the Karnataka High Court has to answer when it starts hearing the matter on Monday. So the decision has not been reached upon. What the Karnataka High Court has said in conclusion is that let's open schools and colleges, let students get back to studies, let the girls go without hijab and study. As of now, matter is being heard. Whatever the final decision is, then the things can proceed, because the High Court has also to decide on the fundamental rights of these girls, whether if they have a right to practice their religion outside or outside their home, why it has to change in the classroom. So it's really a debate which in fact end up going to the Constitution bench of the Supreme Court also. There will be a lot of basic questions which will have to be answered, and it will be set as a precedent for the entire country. So this in all is a very sensitive issue, and the politics in this issue is something which is being played out now out of Karnataka. Because if you see the comments which were made by Chief Minister of Karnataka, he was very sensitive on the issue. When he was asked about the court verdict, he didn't say anything pro or against anybody. He just said that let's not intimidate or instigate anybody who has not got an order in their favor. Let's all come back to schools and colleges, let's study, and let the courts decide whatever legal opinion they have to do. In fact, the Karnataka government has not opened or at least not announced that the colleges will be opened on Monday.
Okay.
They took a meeting yesterday. They have a meeting this evening.
Right. Mustafa, I'm going to cut you short. I'm going to quickly cut across to Mufti Muhammad, who was the AIMIM MLA, joining us on the phone line. Mr. Muhammad, here you have the Karnataka High Court saying that there is no interim relief. Girls cannot attend classes with their hijab until the Karnataka court takes up the matter, which is on Monday. So we are seeing at least a 3-day period where students will not be allowed. Of course, it's a weekend. Today, many of the colleges could have opened, but they decided to remain shut because of the sensitivity of the situation here. How do you view this hijab controversy, which has now reached the Supreme Court? Supreme Court also now waiting for the High Court's clearance.
Hello.
Sir, we can hear you. Go on. Sir, Mr. Mufti, can you hear me? Mr. Mufti, can you hear me? Right, we're going to try and patch Mr. Mufti. In the meanwhile, we're looking... Yeah, Mr. Mufti, can you hear me? Right, we're going to try and patch Mufti in the meanwhile, but here we understand that the situation has, of course, escalated with the Supreme Court now deciding that the matter must first be cleared by the Karnataka High Court. They're going to wait for a judgment from the Karnataka High Court. Only then the matter will be heard, if at all necessary, at the Supreme Court. In fact, we have a big news coming in, but before that, I'm going to try and get back to Mr. Mufti. Mufti ji, aapko sunai de raha hai? Mufti ji, aapko sunai de raha hai? All right, we're going to try and patch him again, but I'm going to cut across. Let me cut across to a big breaking news coming in here. Amid this hijab face-off, Union Minister Giriraj Singh has now made a massive statement. In fact, he said he's batted for Uniform Civil Code. This is Union Minister Giriraj Singh and his statement. He says attempts are being made to create regional and religious divide. Giriraj further saying the time has now come to demand Uniform Civil Code. Giriraj also saying that section of the society dictating the country's law. Here is the Union Minister, Giriraj, who says Uniform Civil Code is now mandatory. It's about time that the government implements Uniform Civil Code, and that also he further says that a section of the society is dictating the country's law. Some really big statements made by the Union Minister Giriraj. Remember, this is one of the attempts or one of the promises that the BJP has made so long, that Uniform Civil Code will be implemented in the country if they are in power, or if they continue to be in power. This is something that the BJP has to live up to as per their promise. And that said, we've seen a lot of resistance on the Uniform Civil Code, particularly by the minority community. Here is Giriraj, Union Minister, now stepping in, saying this is now about time that Uniform Civil Code be implemented in the country, asking for a Uniform Civil Code to be made mandatory at the earliest. He says attempts are currently being made to create religious and regional divide. He in fact says that a section of the society, possibly referring to the minority, those who are fighting against the hijab ban inside educational institutions, saying that a section of the society now dictating the country's law. Let me cut across to Paulami joining us for more on that. Paulami, amid this hijab face-off, you have Union Minister Giriraj Singh now batting for Uniform Civil Code. Not surprising though.
Absolutely not surprising. This has been a stated policy of the Bharatiya Janata Party. They have in fact promised, one of the promises among the many goals that they had when they came to power, including, for instance, abrogation of Article 370, the Ram Temple. One of the many promises that was made was about the implementation of the Uniform Civil Code. Of course, every time we seek in terms of any sort of progress which has been made in this aspect, they do say that the Law Ministry is looking into it, that the Law Ministry is, of course, consulting stakeholders, speaking to various bodies in order to, of course, proceed towards this goal, but nothing in terms of an immediate sense of implementation or, moving forward in this regard. But we also know that several private members' bills have also been brought in Parliament by members of the Bharatiya Janata Party or those affiliated with the BJP, partners, allies as well, in fact, calling for a Uniform Civil Code. So it's not surprising that Giriraj Singh, who's also previously spoken about the Uniform Civil Code, not the first time that he's speaking about it, of course, using this row, this controversy, in order to propagate the Uniform Civil Code and saying that it's time, in fact, to bring in the Uniform Civil Code and, quote-unquote, a certain section of society, of Indian society, is now determining how the law proceeds in terms of education, etc.
Right, Paulvi, thank you very much. Giriraj now saying, Union Minister, fully batting for the Uniform Civil Code. Like Paulvi said, no surprises. It has been one of the goals of the BJP to implement a Uniform Civil Code for a while now. Giriraj further goes on to say that it's about time that this is implemented because a certain section of the society has been trying to dictate the law in our country.